What's happening, everybody? This is Hayden Adams with The Designer Who Codes. Today I'm tearing apart my website to talk about how I built my website, Nautilus Designs, my other side of my business, from not just my web development on this YouTube channel, but also my small business that I do run. I recently rebuilt this website. Looks pretty clean, looks pretty good, and I really focused on speed. This was really my priority because I wanted this to be a fast loading website. Really, Google's mission is to make the web faster. And they really give tools for us to analyze how the web can move faster. Google also talks about how a fast page load makes the usability be better, which translates to better search engine optimization. And they provide a fantastic tool called PageSpeed Insights. I'm going to go into this in a second, but really what I wanted to emphasize also was using this tool called Astro. Astro is a fantastic framework. It's my absolute favorite tool. If you've been on my channel for a while, you know I'm a big Gatsby fanatic, and Gatsby was the bee's knees until it wasn't. And I was looking for another tool to really utilize, and through Netlify's, the web kind of survey of web developers, it was showing Astro really taking off, no pun intended. And I really was curious because they have this little chart that says basically how fast can you go with Astro. And Gatsby, WordPress right here kind of in between. You know I'm not a WordPress fanatic, but Astro just launches, I'm sorry for all the rocket puns, but it shows 60% versus 41% for Gatsby. And my previous site was all Gatsby. It was a fantastic site. I loved it, but I really wanted to rebuild it and use all that Astro has to offer. So the site has been rebuilt, nautilusdesigns.com. You're welcome to take a look at it. And running Astro and really focusing on making the web faster, I ran my site today to make sure I was where I wanted to be. And if we take a look at the PageSpeed Insights, whew, that's a tough word to say all of a sudden. Well, I ran my report. Today's August 1st at 10:34 a.m. And if we go to mobile, and this is where you have to look at, Google is mobile first. They want to make sure that your site's going to work on mobile. And mobile thinks about with Google that it's going to be not as forgiving. Most likely you're not going to have a very fast connection when it comes to a mobile site. So everything becomes tougher on the mobile site. Desktop is more forgiving. You'll probably have your Wi-Fi there. Mobile can be Wi-Fi, but you got to think about that you might not be on Wi-Fi, so things have to load a little bit slower. So these numbers reflect both the mobile first. My saying is with this website, Google does nothing for fun. To me, I think about, well, mobile came first, desktop came second, and that's a reflection of Google's mobile first policy. So if we could look at this website and break it down, my performance I wanted to make sure was at least 90 or higher. And I really strive for 100 on accessibility. Accessibility is really, really important. And when we think about the PageSpeed Insights, I also think about, again, Google does nothing for fun. They're really focused on how can they create the best web experience. Hence, make the web faster is developers.google.com. They're focusing on us developers to make the web faster. So they really put performance first, accessibility second, best practices third, and SEO fourth. They could have put SEO first over performance, but they said performance is numero uno, and then accessibility is right there with it. So I like to focus on these two areas. And whenever possible, I strive always to get accessibility at 100. Almost no way do I skimp at focusing on accessibility because accessibility should be paramount in addition to making the web faster. So if we look at performance and we scroll down this page, you can click on any one of the numbers to get down below to where you want to get to. So if you're new to this section, if I click on any one of these, it'll scroll down. I'm just going to scroll down and talk about where I did it, what did I do, and also what could always be improved because any website will always ask for some improvement. Now I am using Bootstrap for my design and I did use some Google fonts. So there are some loading times that are involved with this at the very beginning. Basically, I always joke that to get a 100 on a performance on a mobile site, you basically need a text-based Craigslist kind of site where there's not a lot of loading components. There's a very low initial loading time. So I'm always going to have some hits at the very beginning. You want to at least stay, at least if you can't get to 90 to 100, at least get in that 50 to 89 range. If you're at 0 to 49, take a look at your website, because that's a very slow loading site. So looking at it, it shows how fast did it load. And it kind of like, well, took a few little bit times to load in these different areas. And then eventually, boom, it loaded. I did have my load set to eager on the picture, so that way it loaded as fast as possible, but I wanted enough content to come in first before the picture came in second. So the Google fonts came in. I use Bootstrap, so it is 25.1 kilobytes, load time of 1.21 milliseconds, and the Bootstrap min along with the bundle needs to come in. And this is where, whenever you can, make sure you're loading pictures as fast as possible. It'll always recommend you save things at a certain size. I totally agree. It does what it can. Just be aware that if you're close in numbers, resource size, you should be estimated savings at 232 to 205. I'm not sweating that. We're using WebPs on this design. Thank you, Astro, for your image. This is fantastic. And again, I could lower this a little bit lower, but now we're splitting hairs at how small we're getting at. The Lace House linen picture, the picture I have down at the bottom down here, right here, we're looking at recommended size from 72 to 61 kilobytes. Again, I'm not stressing over these. If you're at like 300 kilobytes, you should be around 70 to 80. That's where you need to look at and say, basically, am I way off on the image sizes that are loading too much? Looking at all your loading properties can really be important on how you're optimizing your performance for especially mobile. And real quickly, if I go back to desktop, we're going to see performance at 99, and we're going to look at this in a second. It's much more forgiving. So I'm really focusing on mobile priority as much as possible, because desktop will then be much more in that forgiving sense. Don't have to worry too much on the desktop. But again, most people look at the web on their mobile devices. So the largest content pain point in here, lazy load not applied. Yes, that is correct. I did set it to be loading as eager. So in that respect, I did, even though it says loading, I do have an eager setup, another part on the website. So it's going to want to load as fast as possible. Request discoverable. I have screenshot of civil rights website with the alt tag. So again, its fetch priority should be high applied. I totally get it. I'm not stressing over that area. Dependency trees. Again, I'm not worried about these too much. Again, fonts load. Fonts are fine. G static. All good there. So again, Google's going to find some breakdowns of problems. I guess there's some unused CSS on the JS deliver. Not worried about that part if I'm not using all the CSS. So again, I'm not worried about this area when it comes to minimal issues. Again, Google's going to find something. I've yet to have a 100 out of 100 for the performance, but I at least try to say, can I at least get to 91 across, or at least 90 or above, to stay in the green? And sometimes you might just have a heavy site. And what's even interesting, if you have YouTube or Vimeo videos, that you will have a lower possible performance. That's not going to hurt your overall site, just knowing where certain things land when it comes to speed. So I've got this pretty much cleared up, looking good at 91 out of 100. And of course, on the desktop, if we come back to performance, we have basically a lot more in the green. The page loads, then the picture shows up. So it should load first all the important details, and the picture shows up second. Again, it's going to say, of course, you want to have the picture a little smaller than it really is. We're at 232 versus 197. We're splitting hairs, Google. I get it. And that's also why you're giving me a 99 out of 100. You're like, hey, you should be that much lower. And I'm like, I'm only 1 out of 100 off. I'm at 99% out of 100. Give me a break, Google. Like, I'm right there. I'm so close to everything else. So if we come down the page, again, we're looking at, it is splitting hairs on traffic. I totally get it. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. I'm not too worried in this area going on. So again, unused CSS, that's okay. I mean, again, you're just like transfer size, savings. We're splitting hairs, Google. Again, I'm not too worried about where this is going and what it's doing. What I'm really focused on is that, can I get accessibility to 100? Sometimes designs don't call for it, but in most every instance, I'm shooting for 100. So if we look at the accessibility, the first is interactive controls are keyboard focusable. Yep, I do have my navigation set whereby I can then add the keyboard controls where you can move across and then click on a certain navigational item to then make it be focusable. Interactive elements indicate their purpose and state. I do really try to emphasize when you describe when they're clicking on pieces, does the user know what they're going to do? Does it just say read more, or does it not read more? So it really emphasizes what is someone going to do when they click on something. So if it's going to be contact me or learn more, are they learning more about my services, for example? That's really important to note in the ARIA information as well. The page has a visual layout that makes sense, and there's nothing off screen they can focus on, which is totally fine, and a logical tab order. Not to worry about the DOM, it's all good. This just spits out raw code. So Astro, while it uses the DOM initially, it spits out just HTML and CSS. Like, there is no DOM when it comes to the actual output. Going on. No one's trapped. That's always a good sign. HTML landmarks are used to improve navigation. I do use main. I use nav. All the big tags you should be using in there is where you should have it. And Google's like, hey, that's really great. The main section is up top. The nav is at the bottom. And I put the footer at the very bottom. So I have those pieces to not have to worry about. Off screen, not worry about that part. Custom controls, associated labels. And then the ARIA roles are also important. So in different places, if you do have a learn more button, you want to know where you're going. And so once again, get started with us. The get started is the contact page right here. That's the button we're focused on the home page to go forward on. So I'm really focusing on making sure that accessibility is numero uno. Again, past audits is also important to note. If we go down here, it's got ARIA controls if it needs it. The user scalable is set to no. What it also makes sure is it's got the title tag, it's got the language involved, it's got lists containing LIs, and I don't know if I have scripts too much on the bottom part. But again, you want to make sure that you have the correct lists going on your pages. Another part to be aware of is that the touch targets have sufficient size and spacing. You want to make sure that your user can click on things not just from a mouse perspective, but from an actual hand perspective on a mobile device. So you want to make sure the buttons are amongst a certain size so someone can click on one when they actually go to click. They're not having to really squeeze in a picture or zoom in to find how to click an image or a sense of pictures. So it does have certain sizing that it does talk about, and it does even give you details if you want to click forward to talk about what is the correct size when it comes to having your buttons be larger or smaller to be adequate for that area when it comes to web accessibility. We come down here, I don't know why I scrolled up. Again, heading elements appear in sequentially descending order. So I'm really making sure that I try to move things from top to bottom as best as possible, and always making sure you have your alt tags. This should really be your first and foremost. But again, not just saying Untitled 1, Untitled 2, Untitled 3, but describing what is there to make it accessible. If we scroll down the page a little further, best practices, I'm not worried about these areas only because I don't have a lot of DOM-based XSS. I don't really have. Again, I'm running raw HTML, CSS. There is a DOM for Astro as it is Astro.js. But when it actually comes to exporting the site, it exports all into raw HTML, CSS, which is why Astro can run that much faster. Coming down to use HTTPS. Yes, I am running this. You should not have HTTP any longer. HTTPS for everybody. Avoid deprecate APIs. Avoid third-party cookies. Yep, avoid request. I'm not worried about these pieces. I don't have geolocation, permissions, just aspect ratios. Again, I'm not really worried about these areas. This is kind of where it's looking for any kind of best practices. It has the viewport initial scale. It's got the doc type. It's got the character set. So again, little things that should already be in your site, but always double check this just to make sure you didn't miss something one thing I do with my website is I do use the Get Bootstrap, and I look at the docs, and I use these quite a bit. I really pull a lot of my projects in via the Get Bootstrap because it already comes with the doc type at the top, the language, the UTF, the viewport, the title, and then it links to the Bootstrap. In this case, this is 537, and then the Bootstrap JavaScript at the bottom. So I'm already kind of bringing in a base template where it already has the viewport, the device width, the initial scale when it comes to the website. Let me close this one. So you might using Tailwind, I use Bootstrap. They're all one amongst the same when it comes to CSS frameworks, but I like with Bootstrap, it gives you a basic template to work off of, and it already contains everything you almost need when it comes to best practices. And then the fourth, we have SEO. Again, it's got the page isn't being blocked from indexing. I didn't write a no follow. Document the title element. It's got a meta description. It's got the status code. It has descriptive text. This is really big. So again, this is where it's more a web accessibility area, matches SEO, but we look at the links have descriptive text. This is where you want to make sure your links say not just read more, but read more about blank. And this is where you can get into the ARIA labels. So if you want to go into that as well, you can. Links are crawlable. Images have alt tags. I'm not worried about the languages. This is where if you were to link different directions to a Spanish, German, you can put href languages in there, which I'm not applying on my direction. And nothing else. I've got a robot.txt is valid and document is a valid canonical link. So again, I'm making sure I'm following all the best practices. And it says best practices for this third one, but I think about all being best practices. If you want to dive deeper, you're welcome to inspect my website, Nautilus Designs, but this was a deeper dive into PageSpeed Insights to, as Google says, make the web faster.